Our talk is about the Noob persistent threat.
And the original title was, what was it, Allison?
Our original working title, I liked it a lot better. It was called Stalking Children for Fun and Profit, but Brandon objected, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, I really didn't want that to come up as the first Google result for my name. Maybe females can get away with that, but not so much. But, yeah. So, who are we?
So, I'm a security consultant. I do pen testing and incident response. I'm also a host on the Paul.com podcast. If you were at FAST last year, also a lot of people have been asking me. Yes, I'm the person that messed up the CTF last year. Thank you for tolerating my shenanigans. And if you see Ming, give him a hug for me. Tell him I said hi.
I'll do that.
So I'm Brandon Levene. I'm an incident handler and incident response for a cloud provider. And you can figure it out yourself who it is. I do malware vulnerability analysis as well, sort of on the side. I wear a lot of hats right now. A lot of my research is independent. I do not represent the company that I currently work for. And I happen to be SAN certified as a pen tester, but I don't actually do anything involved in that. So.
Yeah, this stuff has nothing to do with my day job either. This is just all me, nothing to do with my company.
So what is the new persistent threat?
It's basically bottom feeders of the criminal economy.
Well, yes, but what we found were that they're often American citizens. They're often pretty vocal on hacking forums, and they have really, really piss poor OPSEC. And we'll show that off pretty soon, and if you guys have read any of the Krebs stories, you'll see where we're going with this. These are generally the lowest of the low. Kids who will sell or buy DDoSers, who will buy rats to mess with their friends. You're looking between the ages of about 14 and 18 are a big subset. RuneScape is a big feeder for these kids. It's actually pretty interesting. You don't see a whole lot of World of Warcraft. You see mostly RuneScape, some shooters, things like that. It's an interesting little section of ways that they get it. Go ahead.
I don't know really how you get this, but I'd be interested to see economic demographics for this group as well.
We have some numbers later.
So the question was economic demographics of this group. It's very difficult to tell without surveying, and obviously the target audience is slightly unreliable. So you can make really large-scale assumptions based on just behaviors, things like syntax and stuff like that. You can tell whether someone's a native English speaker or not. You can tell generally by age, just by their interests and things that they post about. But it's definitely pretty difficult to tell, to make a full-fledged assumption on economic levels.
Yeah, based on the few people that we've been able to track down, there is kind of a pattern. A lot of people are US or EU citizens. They're actually upper middle class-ish.
Mostly Caucasian.
Yeah, and almost entirely male. When we track down people's home addresses, often we see upper scale neighborhoods that they live in. So that's a good indicator. So these people are not doing this to survive. They're doing it for other motivations.
Well, in that age group at least.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking to yourself you don't have anything worth stealing, this is from a RSA report released in 2012. Pretty good white paper. These slides will be released at some point, and unfortunately the link is cut off at the bottom, but it is actually on there. So if you have any or all of these things, yeah, someone's going to try to steal it from you. And depending on who they are, they might be pretty good at it. Fortunately, the kids we were dealing with were mostly focusing on the last one and the PayPal accounts. But you can find pretty much all of this stuff anywhere. So the Noob Renaissance. So Imperva released a pretty awesome report 2 years running. It's called the Hacker Intelligence Initiative. So in 2011, they surveyed a fairly well-known site, and if you have visited that site, you can pretty much surmise what the background is. So this is a pretty interesting breakdown of really in a year the transition from slightly more focused discussion to a much larger group of tutorials, noob-friendly behavior, noob-friendly guides, YouTube videos, media guides, really on a very large scale of topics, and these are far less technical than they would be about a year earlier. Again, links to the reports are at the bottom, unfortunately, but they're awesome. Way to go, Imperva. I actually found this as we were preparing for the slideshow, and it provides some really awesome statistics for us. So, lists of the services are offered.
So we're just going to go through the list. First of all, there's booters, DDoS for hire sites. These are the ones that were featured in Krebs articles. Basically, they're web applications that automate selling DDoS services. You give it money, and then you issue an attack and say, hey, let's DDoS this website for these many seconds using this method. And yeah, assuming it works. But if it does, then it can launch a DDoS attack for you, and you don't need to demonstrate any technical skill whatsoever.
Click button, make bad dead.
Basically. And oftentimes booters have Skype name to IP resolution services, Cloudflare resolvers, and things like that that help you find the IP address of your target. There's also cryptors, which are used in combination with malware to make them undetectable by antiviruses. There's a pretty big market for that on hack forums. Hosting services and VPNs, usually they're advertised as bulletproof hosting. Most of these are kind of unprofessional shops that are offering hosting. They don't last very long for the most part, and they're probably mostly scams.
Yeah. Well, pretty much anything on these is going to be a scam to some degree.
It's all really shady, and there's a lot of scams. There's also rats, remote administration Trojans. Black Shades and Dark Comet are two of the biggest ones on hack forums.
Yes, we found the author to Black Shades, and he's kind of a guru.
We've also got exploit kit sales, pay per install. People will pay money to get their rats installed on random machines on the internet. So there is definitely a market for that. Credentials for identity theft. We see this less on hack forums and more on the more hardcore hacking forums, because hack forums does not actually allow the sale of credit cards. Question?
Yeah, like what percentage would you say of these rats are backdoored by people selling them?
So you asked what percentage of the rats that are sold on hack forums have a backdoor in them. I can't answer it because we didn't actually look into that, but we hear about people getting scammed all the time, so...
I would suspect a large majority of them at least have some functionality, especially if they allow for persistence on a target. I'm sure there's fairly confident there's going to be a covert channel for communication from a bot master.
Let's see what else have we got here. Selling accounts, gamer tag jacking is a big thing. Let's see, Netflix passwords, Minecraft accounts are another big thing.
So it's interesting. Reputation is actually pretty important on these forums. As you'd imagine, getting credibility with other criminals is kind of odd. It's sort of it's doomed to fail from the beginning, but they certainly try. Pretty interesting tidbit. If you can see the HF lead tag, it's basically a tag that says, "Hey, I paid $20 to get this tag." That's it. It has no indication of legitimacy. Oh, actually, sorry. That's the HF Guru tag in the lower left. The neat one, I think, is for what, number of sales or something.
I have no idea, but one big thing is that the people on these hacking forums, they try really hard to be anonymous, but on the other hand, they also have to stick to one identity so that they can build credibility. So this is kind of like conflicting needs that they need to fulfill in order to do their illegitimate business, and this actually makes them a lot easier to track down, because if they dump an identity, they're also dumping all the credibility they built up.
And even better, they like to associate themselves with groups, so it makes finding multiple members that are taking part in the same activity relatively easy.
Did you take a look at all the hidden services?
Wasn't in the scope. Wasn't in the scope for this. Is that something I'd like?
He asked, did we look at the Tor hidden services? And no, we haven't looked at that yet.
We actually kind of hit a lot of the low-hanging fruit because it was the funniest.
Mostly because it's easy. A lot of this stuff is not super damaging. It's not like stealing millions of credit card numbers. We hit this stuff more because it was easy and we can track them down.
Yep. So one of the lower end services is a homework service. It's pretty obvious what it is. It's basically paying that kid to write your essay. Probably not illegal. It's fraudulent, pretty stupid, but we'll go through that pretty quickly because the next slide is terrifying.
No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So e-whoring, they will sell picture packs of naked women, and then the customer can pretend to be that naked woman and sell pornographic services on the internet, even though they're male. So
it pretty much requires zero technical skill. This is an exercise in social engineering. You are essentially mimicking an interaction with a target in order to get them to buy your services as if it was a legitimate social interaction.
So when you see these spam ads saying people like Pamela Bean here want to meet you and talk to you, that's part of this e-whoring.
They really don't want to meet you, huh?
No, and they're probably not Pamela Anderson either. So let's see. Right, cash for sale, credit card fraud. There are huge markets on these hacking forums for stolen credit card numbers. And if you know where to look, there's a lot of information that's basically available to the general public. All of this stuff is not really much farther than a couple clicks away from a Google search. So this one, I believe, is from Alberac.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a forum called Alberac, and there's a lot of identity theft that goes on this one.
Yeah, we found Alberac actually, it overlaps quite a bit with some of the other goods that were sold on hack forums. And as we came to this one, we realized, hey, it's definitely not English speaking as a primary language, it's mostly Middle Eastern. But this is much heavier in financial fraud. So buying bank accounts, buying PayPal accounts, balances, selling massive dumps of credit cards, things like that.
So also, if you know where to look, you can find a lot of credit card details that are just sitting out there on the internet. So this one is from IRC. I got to this chat room by going to the Undernet IRC network, and then I went into some of the credit card oriented channels like CC Power, I think is one of them. And when you join these spam channels, bots will automatically message you with invites to other credit card fraud channels. So I followed that path, and I found some IRC networks that had basically no rules at all. And I believe that one is called God Unix or something. And there were channels where you could just sit in there and they'll spam credit card details. And the purpose of that is there are IRC bots in there called check bots. And you put in credit card credentials in a certain format, and they'll check to see if the credit card credentials are valid, which is a useful operation if you're trying to determine the validity of a dump of credit cards. So I know it looks like the CIA has gone through that, but I tried to blank out all the identifying information. Although, of course, it's long been invalidated.
They're usually burned within a couple hours.
Oh, within a few seconds, I'm sure.
Usually.
Also, Pastebin is a great place for credit card spam. There's a lot of this stuff. My unscientific survey shows that most of it is Vietnamese people spamming on Pastebin for credit card stuff. A lot of bad English. Sometimes these emails match up to Facebook accounts, and almost all of them are Vietnamese.
Which is kind of a bad idea if you're spamming illegitimate services to have a social media profile linked to the same account.
Yeah, there are so many, like, we harvest emails from all of this stuff, and every single time I see an email, plug it into Facebook. And a surprising number of times you will get a Facebook account attached to the email. May or may not be real, but it's there and it's very interesting sometimes. Question?
Is that because there's no prosecution happening?
He asked, is that because there's no prosecution happening and they can get away with it? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Because one, a lot of these people, especially involved in credit card fraud, live in other countries, so they don't have to follow U.S. law.
Tunisia, Vietnam,
yeah, a lot
Palestine.
of Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah.
So they don't have to comply with U.S. law, and it's very difficult for the United States to arrest people in certain countries because the governments don't cooperate with extradition and investigation and stuff.
Here's a pretty quick sample that's been up on some of the credit card prices. So your Visa card that's probably sitting on your wall is about $3. Full date of birth is about $15. All the information that I would want to steal your identity is $20. That includes social security number, credit card information, phone numbers associated with the credit card. Anything and everything I want is about $20.
And that's from the Paste-In post as well. He posted samples. A lot of these credit card spam include samples so that they can show off the quality of their data. And so, yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, they actually are spamming with social security numbers, with date of births, with private security questions, and PIN codes.
And passwords.
Oh yes, and passwords, which are always fun.
Credit card number, expiration date, CVV, and address.
Also, if your PIN code is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you should probably change it.
Yeah.
I know it's a great combination for luggage, but I know it's easy.
So Carter shops are when you're trying to sell a lot of stolen credit cards, you're going to want to automate that as much as you can because, you know, more efficient. So there are a lot of Carter shops. Actually, if you do a Google search, say buy CVV, just put that in a Google search, all the first results will be Carter shops, and you can sign up and give them money and buy credit cards, and you can actually like add them to your shopping cart, just like any shopping application, and do a checkout.
What about your credit cards?
I'm not selling them. Sorry. Someone else is selling them, not me. So this one is a site called Carter.us. I found it last year, actually through a somewhat circuitous path. There was a child that put a Black Shades rat on one of my clients' machines.
Sorry, cool
How does
shit.
the checkout process work on these sites?
Say again?
How does the checkout process work on these sites? How do you pay?
Pay with Liberty Reserve, or sorry, he asked how does the checkout process work on these sites and how do you pay? So obviously they don't take credit cards.
Actually, some of them do.
And they don't accept PayPal, but you pay with these services like Liberty Reserve and eGold. These are payment services that are supposed to be like less regulated than our typical payment services that we
It's supposed to be
use.
cash on them.
Yeah, it's like digital cash, no chargebacks, no refunds, and like the services themselves are legitimate, but they are almost entirely used for crime. So anyways, the way I got to this site was a somewhat circuitous path. There was a child that put a Black Shades rat on one of my clients' machines. And I found out that it was a child because the whois data in the domain that it's going home to had, it was his info and his Hack Forums username and his email. And I followed that path and I was like reading his Hack Forums posts and all his personal life BS and looking at his Facebook. And it's like this, it was at the time this 15-year-old in the UK. And he's still running free. I mean, I totally sent the information to the authorities and he's still running free. But anyways, on his command and control server, he had like a whole bunch of files laying around. And one of these files was the source code for Carter.us because the owner was trying to sell it on a hacking forum. So this child downloaded the source code. And so I had the source code of Carter.us. Question?
When you sent this information to the authorities, did you CC his mother?
It's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, I've never tried to call any of... Oh, I mean, the question he asked was, when you sent this info to the authorities, did you CC his mother? So I've never actually tried to call any of the phone numbers. Brian Krebs did call the phone numbers.
We'll get to that later, but yeah.
But yes. I probably could have gotten him grounded.
The computer's being taken away for 2 weeks.
So anyways, I had the source code to Carter.us, and as I was looking through the source code, it was just a PHP MySQL web application. And I found out that it was recording all of its access logs to a text file. in the web root. And so, you know, a .txt file with no password protection at all. So we had all their access logs for a period of several months. And
this was still, no, that was past access logs, right?
yeah, this was last year, between, I think it was like July or June and September or something like that. And we had all their access logs until they wiped the site and replaced it with some other software. And actually I have a data dump that I'm going to make available at the end of this talk. And that includes the Carter.us source code, access logs, and Booter source code as well. So you can dig through it if you like.
There's a whole lot of fun stuff in there.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff.
So a lot of our talk, I guess, is going to be consumed by the Booter shells, because they're probably the most interesting. They're DDoS for hire sites. Like we explained earlier, pay money, get access, pick one of a myriad of layer 4, layer 7 techniques, and attempt to DDoS your target offline. It tends to be big for Xbox Live, Steam, competitive gamers, basically anybody that a angry 15-year-old gets mad at on the internet will try to do this.
Yeah, Booter shells for the most part are used to target gaming-related websites and fellow gamers. Based on a lot of analysis we've done on dump databases from Booter shells, we really haven't seen a lot of major sites targeted, and the biggest reason for this is these Booter shells don't necessarily have the power that one would need to take down a major site. However, if you've got a small server running or a home internet connection, this can probably wipe it out.
Yeah, this will nail anything, but probably the highest one, like FiOS 100 meg up, 100 down, 25 up. It'll probably still get nailed.
Assuming it works.
Yes, assuming it does work.
A lot of them don't work very well.
Or at all.
Yeah.
So one of the really common threads is a lot of these site proprietors rent Ecotel servers for this. They'll rent probably 5 or 6 of them, and they'll use that to amplify it to stage their attacks. They're not usually compromised web servers like you'd see in the large scale attacks like OK No Problem Bro, the stuff that attacked the banks back in September. So these are actually servers that they're paying for, that they're using for legitimate purposes.
And usually we're looking at about half a dozen servers. This is the scale of DDoS attacks we're talking about. But the servers themselves are rather hefty, usually costing around $100 to $300 a month kind of bandwidth. And each booter has their own brand name as well, which is kind of interesting. I don't think this is Disney authorized merchandise. And I don't think that's authorized as well. But you know, this next one, this has got some pretty priceless brand placement. I promise I did not alter that image at all. That is a screenshot from the top of the ad on Hack Forums. And they accept PayPal.
Like a lot of them do.
Actually, 100% of booters that we surveyed accept PayPal.
And by survey, we mean we actually looked at it. We didn't ask for them. Sorry.
Well, I mean, if you log on to the site and create an account and pretend to pay, you have to get to a PayPal payment page in order to do it. So we got a lot of information about that, actually. So there's a lot of booter source code floating around. When script kiddies set up websites to do script kiddie type attacks, they tend to get attacked because fellow script kiddies love attacking each other, and a lot of script kiddie websites get hacked, and source code ends up getting leaked and floating around the internet, and then that source code gets picked up by other people, recycled, modified, used. Vulnerabilities may or may not be fixed, and the cycle begins anew.
It's beautiful anyway, but not anyway. Actually, pictured here is one of the source code dumps that we have in our very large dump eventually. This is the Rage Booter leak from 2012, and remember that name Rage Booter because it's coming right up.
Yeah, this is the one that was featured in the most recent Krebs article a couple days ago. Yeah, this guy. This is his Hack Forums username that he tattooed on his back.
And he's banned from that forum.
Yeah, he uses that username a lot when he's dealing with Booter stuff, and for some reason he thought this was a good idea.
Oh, do you want to talk about your new invention of the honey bitch?
Honey bitch? Which one is that?
The Facebook honey bitch?
No, don't talk about that. I'm still using it.
Okay.
You didn't hear that.
That doesn't exist. So, this guy is pretty weird. So after getting banned from hack forums, which was apparently his soul, he did this whole, I guess, almost a eulogy for himself to be reborn as a legitimate businessman. You know, detailing his skills. He's actually not 21; he's still 20. Sorry, you know, whatever. He actually does have some interesting skills, and he did have a job, but I don't think he has that anymore. So I'd kind of like to point out, if my mouse actually goes over there, this part, the booter be gone, because that's actually a kind of common thread. A lot of these people will try to corner a market. I mean, it's not necessarily a huge market, so if you knock everybody else out, you know, you're going to get all the business. I mean, it's not a lot of business, which we'll show you in a few, but it's still pretty interesting. Where did my mouse go? Okay. But yeah, so he posted this in, what, 2012? As of this date, he's still running an active booter website, so clearly his business model did not take off.
Actually, as of a few hours ago, he might have been suspended. His hosting might have suspended him, so he might have to find a new place.
Oh. So, yeah, this is taken from his Facebook. And
his Facebook was a goldmine of comedy for months.
Yeah, if you're...
All of his posts were public, and all of his posts contain some kind of stupid drama in his personal life.
Okay, so I don't care about pot or marijuana, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot.
I'm going to call BS.
It's actually from his business.
That's a lot. I mean, based on his behavior, it's not really that out of the realm of reason.
I mean, maybe he manages it. I don't know. He does kind of crazy stuff sometimes.
Yeah, he basically behaves like an angry 15-year-old, pretty much most of the time. So anybody that crosses his path, he'll threaten to DDoS. But while it's fun to make fun of people, you know, it's not really that nice. So, oh wait, that's his dashboard. So pretty basic PHP. We saw about 400 attacks per day when we were watching it. He posts updates every so often. This was as recently as Monday.
Yeah, it's under active development.
Yeah, it's still under active development. So, you know, one of the big recurring themes about these booters and stressors is that this is a legitimate service, right? You know, this is only for people to test on their own authorized servers and stuff like that. But when you go posting things about, you know, how an Xbox Live resolver, in order to find a target to attack, is not feasible, that kind of defeats the purpose of pretending your site is legitimate. Because I'm pretty sure most Xbox Live people are not going to want to do that. So this happened after Mr. Krebs posted an article yesterday. And this was, the first picture is a data dump of his database. The next picture is what it looked like immediately afterwards. And then the next picture is, hey, the site's back up and running again, and he's purged the database. This is not the first time, but...
It's probably the second time this week.
Second time this week that he's done this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry.
So I did a technical analysis of RageBooter, and I was able to uncover some of the command and control structure. This can give you an idea of how the process works if you were to use a booter. So it starts out with the malicious attacker or the user on RageBooter initiating the attack, and it's basically using the web front end to say, hey, target this IP, use this method, do it for these many seconds, and then press start. And that's how difficult it is to launch a DDoS attack. And then your request is filtered through the Cloudflare DDoS protection service, which RageBooter uses in order to protect it from DDoSes. And then once Cloudflare,
You may laugh about that, but how many, over 70%
of the booters that we've seen use Cloudflare. And Cloudflare basically protects the booter market from itself. So after the request is filtered through Cloudflare, it is received by the RageBooter web front end, which is basically PHP script. And then it's sent to the next available attack server in round-robin fashion. I was able to uncover the IP addresses of all the attack servers because of the next step. If you're running a layer 7 attack, if you are familiar with the way that TCP works, when you are trying to make a connection over TCP, you can't spoof your source IP address because it sends packets back to verify that it's you. So if you have a server and you're trying to run a DDoS attack, and you're trying to look like you have, or if you're trying to bypass any kind of blocking that might be going on, you're probably going to want to use a proxy. So so you run some layer 7 attacks, and then the attack server will send a lot of requests over a large number of open proxies. And I mean, it keeps this list of open proxies, and it retains them over time. There's a lot of automated services that will scan for open proxies for you. Can you go back a second? And it's really easy to get lists automatically. And then the requests are sent from the open proxies to the victim. Now, the reason I could get these IP addresses is because a lot of these proxies pass along the X forwarded for header, which, if you're not familiar with it, contains the IP address of the server that sent the request to the proxy. So here's some sample flood packets from RageBooter. There is, at the top there, you see a post flood, which is a layer 7 attack. It basically makes a post request to the victim. And if you look at the bottom there, it says test123. It actually sends the username of the attacker in the packet. So say I registered an account on RageBooter called test123 and then attacked someone, they can just look in the traffic and say, oh, hey, that was test doing that. And then you can see the X forwarded for leakage as well. Oh, and sorry, the other packet there with all those range headers, that one's called the Army attack, but you might also know it as CVE 2011-3192.
Or Apache Killer, as it's colloquially called.
Yeah, it's a Apache memory exhaustion attack.
So we're running short on time, so do you want to skip over a
How much
little
time
bit?
do they have that?
That much.
Holy crap. Okay, Asylum Looter is run by children and accepts PayPal. Next. This is their earning report. In 2012, they made $23,000, split between the owner and several staff. And that's a maximum amount. The database didn't record any chargebacks or fraud, so the actual take-home pay is probably a lot lower. So, conclusion, you're better off on welfare. Next. Okay, so I did an analysis of the customer base. When you pay with PayPal, they save your PayPal email address, and I just took all those and plugged them into Facebook, and also Google and everything. I'm not going to release any of the emails because I didn't do 100% positive identification. I don't want to accuse anybody falsely. But there was a clear pattern. There were a lot of gaming server admins, self-described gamers, very elite hackers. And I also found one that was connected to a police officer in Florida. I don't know what to make of that, but I just found it interesting.
So one of the services is a Cloudflare resolver, and this is pretty common. If you know PHP at all, which I kind of do, you can see that it's just this script. It's built in an Nmap. It's a DNS boot script. All it does is look for any additional subdomains that may not have been registered on the Cloudflare. It's pretty great. So the Skype resolver, this was a story that was released a couple months ago. Essentially, a modified Skype binary sits on a VPS. A PHP request is then sent to that VPS, which contains a username. That modified binary actually makes a request to a target, getting the contact card information. That information is then stored locally in a non-obfuscated text file. That file is parsed for the IP information for that target. Boom, you've got a target. So unfortunately, a lot of people do use Skype for this. This is a pretty big data leakage. It's been around for about 4 to 5 years, and
everybody knows about it and abuses it, and Microsoft does nothing.
Sorry, building is. So these are the pretty easy instructions. Hopefully none of you want to set this one up, so skip. But this is actually the parsing script for the plain text log that comes up. Oh wow, this one's interesting, but
we don't even have enough time. Okay, so TW Booter is another booter that was featured on Krebs. It got hacked from the database. It showed that in less than 2 months' time, so the site was used to launch almost 48,000 attacks in under 2 months, which is pretty significant. Next. Oh, okay. So gamer tag jacking is kind of an interesting thing. When Brian Krebs got swatted, the guy that did it was in a community that does this. So what this is basically you pick a gamer tag that you want that might be like a dictionary word or one letter or something that's really cool. And you say, okay, I want the gamer tag F, with just the username letter F. So I'm going to find out who owns it, and then I'm going to use various methods to find out their personal information, name, address, social, date of birth. And then I'm going to call Microsoft and reset the password. I'm going to say, hey, I'm Joe, I own F, and I forgot my password.
Here's my social security number, by the way, just in case you ask.
Yeah, and this technique is actually really powerful. It can be used against any company to abuse their customers. And this is also how, when Brian Krebs got swatted, somebody paid like $3,000 in fraudulent money to his ISP.
So I guess they wanted him online forever?
Yeah, they wanted him to have a lot of internets. And this method was used.
So shout out to Brian Krebs, he's kind of a badass. He got swatted, you found out everything, you kind of helped a little bit, and then Mr. Phobia and/or Ron Stevenson is now in federal prison. So
I don't know if he's in prison or not, but there was a SWAT team involved.
There was a SWAT team. You know what? SWAT teams are cool. So this is kind of our involvement. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for that.
A lot of the information that is there has been deleted since.
Yeah, so if you're doing cool stuff, take screenshots.
Yeah,
it
we
definitely
lost
gets
a lot of
removed.
videos.
Yeah. So if you, so I mentioned counter booters before, and this was a service attempting to corner the market. And if you look at keep an eye on these contributors, because coming up real quick, Hosting for Badge or while up for OPSEC, also known as Maltiga was awesome. Actually, these are out of order, but this is how we track down Mr. Justin Poland.
This is the Rage Booter admin, and this is his whole, all the stuff he left around on the
This
internet.
is all of your little digital artifacts that are left everywhere if you have social media profiles and you cross-contaminate them. If you like to tweet your dating profile on your professional Twitter account, quote-unquote professional.
He's single.
Yes. Although, do not be alarmed if his picture is a little bit different.
Do you have his mugshot?
No, we don't have the mugshot. So, if you guys remember, Origin BV1 came up and they were running an anti-booter site, but were also running booters at the same time. This is also some pretty easy open source gathering. Also, Mr. BV1, shout out, he's also the proprietor / seller of Black Shades Trojan. So, really, this all comes down to the only reason why these services exist is they abuse legitimate services.
Well, specifically booters.
Well, okay, sorry.
So, Cloudflare protects booters from each other, since it's kind of an occupational hazard when you're running a DDoS service, your competitors are going to DDoS you. Cloudflare alleviates a lot of those problems, and in our survey of booters, over 70% used Cloudflare. And then PayPal is a very convenient way to take payments, and in our analysis of the dump databases, the vast majority, like above 90% of the transactions were PayPal and not Liberty Reserve and not Bitcoin. And also, in our analysis of the customer base, a lot of them were what you would consider casual DDoSers. They may not be willing to make the transition to Liberty Reserve if booters were forced to use that. So the fact that Cloudflare and PayPal don't suspend the accounts of booters.
PayPal might be getting better, but as you can see,
Maybe.
Cloudflare, not so much.
Cloudflare is kind of infamous for not following up on abuse reports. It's basically a bulletproof host. I know they don't host the content, but in all the hacking guides, they always recommend a combination of a bulletproof host and Cloudflare.
And, well, we already tied it together kind of, and here you go.
We probably have a minute or two for questions, if anybody has a couple of questions. But just to remind folks, they're going to be doing probably an update to this talk at BSides, Rhode Island, next month, June 14th and 15th. So if you feel like there's a lot more info here that wasn't covered just because we ran out of time, we'll also have a chance to do it again on June 14th, 15th in Providence. And you can continue the discussion down the hallway in the speaker room. So we do have time for 1 or 2 questions, but then we should wrap it up.
Okay.
I was just wondering if booters could be used against a target that had a smartphone where they had to pay like $10 per gigabyte, so you could somehow get their IP address and
I
then
don't
flood them
know.
with traffic. And
Okay, so he was asking if if a booter could be used against a smartphone with an IP address. So basically a Wi-Fi connected smartphone.
Oh, 3G connected smartphone.
Or a 3G connected
They
smartphone.
pay $10 per gigabyte. So.
In theory, yes. In practicality, not so much. There was, we did try out the SMS bomber.
Oh yeah, there was an SMS bomber function on RageBooter, but it didn't work. Much like half of that site. More than half. But I'm not sure if that's possible because if your phone is like behind a proxy and many other phones are using the same IP, then at best they could maybe take down whatever proxy is serving all of the phones. But if phones work like home internet connections where it's one IP per machine, then maybe it could work. I don't know how that works, so.
One more question, please.
Cool.
Okay. I have business cards if you want. We can talk first.